Good morning. This is John from the Springs Mennonite Church, and I'm happy to be with you today. I'm talking about seeing this week, and last night on the television, I saw an ad for LASIK surgery. You've probably seen those where somebody says, "Well, I could hardly see, and I got this surgery, and Dr. So and so did wonders. Now everything's crystal clear." Well, that's not the kind of seeing I've been trying to talk about. I've been trying to talk about seeing God. Now, you can't see God with LASIK surgery. You can't see him with cataract surgery. You can only see God with a trusting heart. And you have to look sometimes. So here's a story from the Old Testament. One of my favorite ones, really. It's a story about Elisha. And Elisha's I'd call him a really neat guy. I don't know how you think of him. But here's the story about him when some king's trying to trap him because he doesn't like what he's been saying. It comes from 2 Kings chapter 6 and beginning with verse 14. So it says here, one night the king of Aram sent a great army with many chariots and horses to surround the city. When the servant of the man of God got up early the next morning and went outside, there were troops and horses and chariots everywhere. "Oh, sir, what will we do now?" the young man cried to Elisha. Now, the first thing Elisha says is something that Jesus said, something lots of other people have said, something I've said. Really, really, really important commentary here. So Elisha says, first thing, don't be afraid. You know, if we're looking for God and we know he's there, we don't have to be afraid. I know circumstances might look bleak. In this case, the servant sees the city surrounded by horses, chariots, and armies. And there's only two of them, he and Elisha, and all of those others. It's no wonder he was scared. Elisha doesn't seem to be disturbed about the matter. In fact, he says, as I mentioned, don't be afraid. Now, he explains this. Why not to be afraid? He says, for there are more on our side than on theirs. Well, if I'm the servant, I'm probably thinking, this guy's lost it. What do you mean they're more on our side than it is on theirs? Look at all of theirs. But you see, the servant makes the mistake of looking at his circumstances. He makes the mistake of looking at the situation from his own understanding. When that happens, not always, of course, but lots of times, it looks like we're in big trouble. But Elisha sees it something different. He sees God at work. You see, every situation that happens is an opportunity for you to see God. Doesn't matter what it is, doesn't matter when it is, doesn't matter how old you are, doesn't matter if you've never ever seen God before. You can still see him because he's always at work. So let's finish the little story here. So Elijah says, praise, O Lord, open his eyes and let him see. Now I'll stop again. Elisha knows something that this servant doesn't know. And what is it? He knows that God is at work. And he knows that God is protecting him. And he knows that regardless of the circumstances, nothing is going to change that. Now, do you know that in your life? Do you know that whatever happens to you, God is at work? Do you know that whatever situation you find yourself in, God has a plan to move you to a better place. So Elijah says to the guy in his hearing, Lord, open his eyes so he can see. So when God does that, it says the Lord opened the young man's eyes. And when he looked up, he saw that the hillside around Elisha was filled with horses and chariots of fire. Now, imagine this young guy. He sees the armies, he sees the chariots, he's scared. And from his standpoint, he has every reason to be scared. The situation from his perspective looks pretty darn well hopeless. But Elijah sees something else. Oh, he sees the armies too. Story goes on to say how he dealt with them. He sees them. He knows they're there. He's not pretending they're not there. They are there. They are real. But he sees beyond what his eyes see. He sees how God is at work. This is an opportunity to see God at work. When you find yourself in a position of appearing hopeless, just remember, it's not. It is an opportunity to see what God is going to do. Now, even if you've never seen him before, okay, start seeing him now. Even if the situation is so overwhelming, you know there's no opportunity to fix this thing. There still is. Now, maybe you won't recognize it immediately like this servant did. I mean, that would be nice, and sometimes that happens. But seeing how God works changes everything. Elisha asked God to open the guy's eyes. And it says he opened his eyes and he saw surrounding the armies a greater force surrounding them. Remember, Elijah said there's more with us than it is with them. And so in our lives, when we find ourselves in a position that doesn't look good, just remember, there's more of God's help around you than it is of those who are trying to hurt you. Might take a little while to discern that, but it's always true. I hope you'll think about that today. I'll be back tomorrow and finish the week with another thought about seeing. If there's anything we can do to help you out, give us a holler. We'll do whatever we can as fast as we can to help meet your needs or pray for your concerns. And we really mean that too. Thanks so much for listening. You take care of yourself. I'll be back tomorrow and we'll finish up this week.